Hi, I'm Pastor Kerry. I want you to think back to a time when you were younger, when you had asked Santa Claus, or maybe your parents, or maybe your grandparents, or somebody, you had asked them for something for Christmas. And now it was Christmas Eve, and you were so excited and you were so hopeful that you were going to find this particular thing under the tree on Christmas morning, that you were having a hard time falling asleep on Christmas Eve. Did you ever have that experience? I know that I had that experience once or twice, or just about every year when I was growing up. Right now it is shortly after 9 p.m. and it is December 24th, 2021. It is Christmas Eve. And this Christmas Eve devotion that I'm sharing with you right now, I have already shared this devotion 3 times today with 3 different groups. One of the questions that I asked these groups each time that I gave this message was, what was it that you had asked for, that you were hoping to find on Christmas morning? And there was one gentleman who said that he had asked for a Red Ryder BB gun. And so I said, oh, so the Christmas Story movies, that was written about you, huh? And he laughed and he said, yeah. And I said, well, did you get the Red Ryder BB gun? And he said, yep, he sure did. I said, did you shoot your eye out? And he said, nope, that he didn't shoot his eye out. And then there was another young woman that said that she had asked for a Nintendo game. And that she, naughty girl that she had gone snooping around the house and that she had spotted that Nintendo game that she wanted. She had spotted it in her parents' room, hidden. And so she was super excited on Christmas morning that it was going to be there waiting under the tree for her. And so on Christmas morning, she was taken back greatly when her little brother opened up that Nintendo game because it was for him and not for her on Christmas morning. So she didn't get what she had hoped for on Christmas. And I told the story of the Christmas of 1977, and you might recall that there was a huge blockbuster movie that came out in 1977. And of course that movie was Saturday Night Fever. You got it. And I had asked for the white polyester leisure suit that John Travolta wore in the movie. No, I'm kidding. Of course, that's not what I asked for. Of course, the big blockbuster movie that came out in 1977 was Star Wars. And I had asked for Star Wars toys on Christmas 1977. And so, of course, I couldn't fall asleep on Christmas Eve. And then next morning when I woke up and I looked under the tree, sure enough, there was a Luke Skywalker action figure. And there was also Luke Skywalker's nemesis. There was a Darth Vader action figure. And to top it off, there was a little Jawa action figure too. So I had Luke Skywalker, I had Darth Vader, and I had a Jawa. And of course, you needed one of the big old accessories that came with them, right? Back then, you had the Millennium Falcon, you had the Death Star, and I got the Land Speeder. I guess Santa was on a little bit of a budget that year, and so couldn't quite pull off the Millennium Falcon or the Death Star, but I did get the Land Speeder. And so Luke and Darth, or Luke and the Jawa, or the Jawa and Darth, that they would go for rides together in that Land Speeder. But friends, the reason I bring up the topic of hope today, and maybe the hope that maybe you experienced when you were a kid, is because this week in the Washington Post there was an article about hope by an author that I really like. The name of the author is Max Boot. And I want to get the title of the article right, so I'm going to read it to you. The title of the article was The Torment of Hope. The Torment of Hope in a Time of Plague. And the opening line of the article was actually a quote by Nietzsche. And the quote is, "Hope in reality is the worst of all evils because it prolongs the torments of man." So, in this article by Max Boot, he goes on to talk about his experiences during the pandemic over the past couple of years and how the pandemic has adversely affected him and it adversely affected his family. And at the end of this article, Max Boot concludes with this sentence. These are literally the final words of the article. He said, "I continue to be tormented by hope." Now listen, Max Boot, I believe, is a good man, and I get it. I do. I totally understand. I would never be one to say that someone's feelings aren't valid, that their opinions are absolutely wrong. I appreciate the fact that Max Boot has had all of these ups and downs over the past couple of years with the pandemic. I get it. His feelings are valid. His opinion is valid. I still like Max Boot a lot. But I'm not sure that I can come to the conclusion that Max Boot comes to. It was interesting because then the very next morning, Max Boot appeared on CNN. And the anchor who interviewed Max Boot said that she really liked this article because it expressed what she had been feeling as well. She was at the point where she felt exhausted by trying to be hopeful. And I get that too. And friends, I can tell you that today, as I have already given this message 3 times, and I still have a midnight service at which I need to give this message again later on tonight. Friends, if you are exhausted, I get it. Today, I saw people that had literally lost loved ones over the past couple of years, and my heart breaks for them. And friends, I think for all of us, suffice it to say, these have been 2 of the most challenging years of our lives. And so, I understand if you are feeling a little bit hopeless right now. And friends, in the Christmas story, I think that we tend to idealize what Mary and Joseph experienced 2,000 years ago. This, of course, could be the point where I could pull out Luke chapter 2 and I could reread that to you, but you practically have this story memorized by now. You know that Joseph had to take Mary with him even though she was 8+ months pregnant. You know that they had to travel 90 miles with Mary, who is great with child, on the back of a donkey, 90 miles from Nazareth to Bethlehem, just so Caesar can find out how many people are in the Roman Empire at that particular moment. And it would have been a miserable trip. And then they get to Bethlehem, a place where they don't know anybody, and so they're looking for a place where they can stay, a room that they can rent, and there aren't any. And they end up with the livestock out in the barn. And when Jesus is born, they just have to put him in a feeding trough, in a manger, because there's no other place to put him. Now, we go back and we romanticize that story. But, friends, how would you have felt if you were Mary? Remember, she was incredibly young. She was a child herself who had just given birth to a child. On the other hand, Joseph was much older than Mary. Much older than Mary. The average lifespan back 2,000 years ago was 35 years, and Joseph was probably over 30 at this point. Here's a man who is approaching the end of his life. As a matter of fact, we know that he didn't live a whole lot longer. We know that we hear about Joseph again when Jesus was 12 years old, and that's the last time we hear from Joseph in the Gospels. So Joseph probably lived to be in his early 40s. He outlived the average person back then, but probably not by a whole lot. So how would you have felt if you were Joseph? How would you have felt if you were Mary? Or think about the rest of the Christmas story as recorded in the Gospel of Luke. You know, of course, that angels came and they appeared to shepherds and said, the Messiah has been born. Go check it out. And friends, when we think of shepherds, we think of people who take care of sheep and people who love animals. And we, of course, idealize shepherds. But if you didn't realize this, then let me share with you that 2,000 years ago, someone who was a shepherd did not have a good reputation. And this is true. Shepherds had such a bad reputation 2,000 years ago that they weren't allowed to testify in a court of law. And I know that you're saying, well, that's not fair. Anybody can testify in a court of law today. And you're right. Today, anybody can, regardless of their profession, regardless of their reputation. But 2,000 years ago, shepherds, simply by virtue of the fact that they were shepherds and they were people who assumedly had failed at every other profession that they had ever attempted, and now they were at the lowest possible profession. Because they were shepherds, they couldn't even testify in a court of law. The angels have gone and said to them, go and share the good news. Well, they're shepherds. Who's going to believe them? Do they have any hope that anybody's going to listen to them? And I want you to even think for just a moment about the Jewish people 2,000 years ago. Because at this point, they had been heard about a Messiah is here, or a Messiah is there, or here's a Messiah, there's a Messiah. And all of them have proven to be false messiahs. And so now when a bunch of shepherds come and say, hey, there's a Messiah, and he was born in a barn, and he's lying in a food trough, is anybody going to believe these shepherds? Did they have reason to be hopeful 2,000 years ago? This child who's just given birth to a child in a town where she doesn't know anybody? This man who's nearing the end of his life? These shepherds who they've been given some of the most incredible news that anyone could possibly be given, but it seems unlikely that anyone's going to believe them? But the interesting thing is that even in this incredibly difficult, almost, if we really put ourselves in their shoes 2,000 years ago, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around that. And these people, Mary, Joseph, the shepherds, they chose hope. We know that they did because we know the rest of the story. We know what they did after this. They chose hope. And so, friends, when you think about the situation that we are in, as we come to the end of 2021 and as we prepare to turn the page to 2022, and we just want to have all of this behind us, and yet Omicron numbers are taking off right now. And I know that it's discouraging. And I know that for a lot of you who, like me, have chosen to be optimistic and have chosen to be hopeful over the past couple of years, I know there comes a point where it can be exhausting. And again, those feelings are valid. Absolutely valid. I'm not saying you're wrong for feeling that way. Friends, the simple message that I have for you tonight on Christmas Eve 2021 is this. In spite of it all, in spite of the ups and downs, in spite of the people that I know, the people that I cared about that have passed away over the past couple of years, in spite of the fact that the news for the next however many weeks, months, years, even though the news doesn't look great, friends, I choose hope. I do. I choose hope. And my hope, there's that word again, my hope is that you can dig deep and that you can try to choose hope as well. Friends, if you've been listening to me for some time, you've heard me say this before. I believe that as followers of Christ, that we are people of hope. I believe that we are called to be hopeful even when the situation seems bleak, even when it seems hopeless. We are called to be people of hope. I choose hope, and I hope you will as well. Amen. Merry Christmas.